All right, ladies and gentlemen. So, Christmas came early this year, apparently. This is something I've been waiting for in Season of Discovery. I've been specifically not making Paladin PvP guide videos because I wanted to satisfy a curiosity. And more specifically, I wanted to see what other people came up with, but specifically, I wanted to see what either SFan would put out or Savix would put out. Now, SFan, very wisely over the years, has not come out with any Paladin PvP guides whatsoever. Not throughout all of Classic, just not at all, basically. But he basically conceded that space to me and Drakova, mostly me in the grand scheme of things. But he was always, of course, happy to talk about, Paladin PvP advice on his streams and yada, yada, yada. And one thing that always annoyed me about it was he would regurgitate tactics that either I or Drakova basically had invented. Like, you do this versus that class, you do that versus this class, you wear this gear versus this class, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, he would tell people that advice, but he wouldn't mention Drakova by name, or he wouldn't mention me by name. And of course, you can never really prove, like, oh, okay, did he watch a Pallytime video and he's just regurgitating the information? You guys no idea. Is that what's happening, or is it the other way around, where he's picked it up through osmosis from people who've actually watched Pallytime videos? And it's just kind of an honest mistake. He has no idea that I exist. But at the same time, if you're supposedly a serious Paladin enthusiast and you don't know, and you're in serious server-wide streamer PvP tournaments, and you don't know who the fuck a Pallytime is, what the hell is what are we doing with our lives? Kind of a thing. So that's interesting. Savix has been playing Rogue for years, though, and so he has a legitimate excuse for not knowing who the hell I am. But at the same time, I still... Can you open your eyes? Can I pause it? Thank you. I don't like pausing on people when they have their eyes closed. Ultimate Retribution Paladin. Yeah. But then I have to ask myself weird questions like this. Like, who the hell is the guy who has the balls to make a video titled "The Ultimate Retribution Paladin Guide for PvP and PvE," and hasn't watched a Pallytime video on the subject? It's just super weird. And I noticed that, like, certain talent choices, certain rune selections, no mention of rotations or anything like that. Certain things that he does just tells me he has no idea that I exist. But this is Christmas for me early because I've been waiting for this, right? I'm like, okay, which is it? Do you guys not know who the hell I am? Or if I don't put out videos, does the information just not exist, so nobody bothers with it? SFan has never come out with a PvP guide video for SoD. He's never come out with a PvP guide video in general. So I suspect he knows who the hell I am, and he knows enough to stay the hell away from it. Savix, unfortunately, has blundered into this space, and so we are going to analyze his PvP guide information. Like I said before, I've made this video already, but I turned off my mic somehow. The Retribution stuff, I would give it a 3 out of 10. It's not bad. The Retribution advice here is that the deep ret PvP stuff is not bad here whatsoever. It's lacking considerable depth to it. That's why it gets a 3 out of 10, as opposed to, oh, it's terrible, I'm giving it a 3 out of 10. It's very basic, and it's missing some critical elements. If it had the critical elements and it was still basic, I'd give it a 5 out of 10. That's basically my critique for it. However, when he starts talking about the Reckoning build stuff, he literally breaks me. I can't handle it. He literally breaks me. I'm going to save how bad it is for later to see if you can identify where he goes wrong. But I've watched basically every piece of Paladin PvP guide information that's ever existed. I've even watched other classes guides on how to deal with Paladin as much as possible. Probably the dumbest thing I have ever seen in any Paladin guide whatsoever was Cargo's sitting around with 3 other warlocks. If you don't know, Cargo's is a warlock main, but he's sitting around with 3 other warlocks, and they're specifically talking about warlock PvP, and it's like a 2.5-hour video. And I'm sitting there happily listening to them talk about how they deal with this class and that class and this class for like, 10, 15 minutes per class. And I'm just waiting for them to get to Paladin. And they finally get to Paladin, and it's literally 2 minutes of watching 4 Warlocks, supposed PvPers, laugh about Paladin. Laughing, literally just saying, oh, we just fear them and they die. Like 2 minutes, we fear them and they die, ha ha ha, and they move on to the next class. And my brain is like, Mithril Insignia exists, right? And of course the answer is no, they didn't know Mithril Insignia exists. That's probably the dumbest thing I've ever heard in any Paladin guide or information ever. But Savix, I think, has taken the crown from that with this reckoning stuff. I'm like, oh my god, is it even worse than that? Because in the defense of Cargos and the rest of them, nobody actually knew that Mithril Insignia existed until I brought it up specifically. That might sound insane, but we didn't have Wowhead for a long period of time. We had, nobody had really looked into all the PvP trinkets in the game, whether you got them at level 20 or you got them at level 60. And so one day I bothered to look at all the gear in the entire game, whether it was high level or low level or not, and I ended up discovering Mithril Insignia trinket. I brought it up to Drakova. Drakova went, holy crap, that's amazing. I guess we're not going to have issues with Warlock anymore. And it's like, yep. And then when Henhouse came out, I had to ask StormX to put Mithril Insignia in the game. And of course, everyone uses Mithril Insignia against Warlocks now. So to watch Cargos and a bunch of other Paladins before Classic WoW kicked off, before officially talk about Paladin PvP like Mithril Insignia doesn't exist is within reason. But I thought a lot about the mistake that Savix makes in this video, and I'm just like, okay, no, this literally takes the cake. I bow down to you, sir. You are now the number one. You're now the number one dumbest thing I've ever heard in a Paladin PvP guide. Holy crud! All right, so we're going to go through this a little bit. I do have an MS Paint open up with all relevant information to talk about because I have made this video before already. Let's get rid of that. Let's pull this up. Let's make it nice and red so we can talk about this later. And we are going to take our sweet, sweet time with this lovely little Christmas present of the ultimate Retribution Paladin guide for PvP for Season of Discovery, Savix version. Aw, yeah. Oh boy, here we go. All right, so I'm going to start with this Ret stuff, and I'm going to leave the Reckoning stuff until last because it literally breaks me, and I'm going to have a hernia at the end of the video. His Retribution stuff is not half bad. Like, it's missing some critical elements that we're going to talk about, but I will praise it for being decently good, the Deep Ret stuff. But the Reckoning stuff is just, dude, you broke me on that one. Like, what the hell are we even talking about at this point? Okay, so let's begin.
PvP build. There's going to be 2 builds. One is Deep Red and one is Reckoning. So for the Deep Red talent, we're going to be putting our talent points in Blessing of Might. Same reason applies. Bigger attack power for more damage. We're going to go with Judgment for big Judgment damages.
Yeah, okay, we're good.
And
I'm paranoid
I want to
now.
explain something about Seal of Command here because a lot of people are missing the point. So 3 into Benediction to unlock Seal of Command. You can also argue going with Deflection instead of Benediction.
All right, so I'm going to pause the video because already he's made a mistake. And this is one of the elements that makes me think he's never watched a Pallytime video ever. Paladins have not been using 5 out of 5. Retribution Paladins for PvP have not been going 5 out of 5 improved Blessing of Might for about 4 years or so now. They used to back in the day. A lot of the information that Savix is going to give you is actually very old PvP information. We're talking like within the first year of Classic coming out, when Paladins were still running around trying to pretend that they were warriors. So they'd have like, 2,000, like literally like a 2,200 mana bar and as much DPS as they possibly could, right? And back in those days, they were rolling with 5 out of 5 improved Blessing of Might. We have since learned the value of mana on our Paladins. We have since changed our gearing. Our gearing looks significantly different. I have it right here. So with Sheath of Light, this is what you look like in Tier 2, Tier 3, Avengers, and Hybrid. and this is just the way to go. Basically, we discovered that you want the all stats gear, basically, and hybrid gear, believe it or not, uses between 3 to 4 pieces of Avengers gear, and then it uses also bits of Martial gear, and that's why the mana levels are so high on these builds. And also the spell power and everything. And that might sound really weird even for like Reckoning, but if you watch any like Drakova video of him like murdering people in Era and so forth, he's literally running around wearing the hybrid gear. If you watch dueling tournaments of people, paladins winning server-wide dueling tournaments, they're wearing the hybrid gear, whether they're deep ret or anything. If you watch, damn it, who is it? Pizza guy. It's not Rex Troy. I should know this. He beats up. Oh man, my brain is dead. Who's the other Paladin player who's actually really good? He's Russian, I think, or that might be an insult these days. I can't remember his name. It's going to drive me nuts. But he beats up the other really good rogue, Peo. Right? I just can't remember his name right now. But if you watch his famous duel with Peo, where he just smashes him into the dirt, he's wearing hybrid gear. This is just the way things work now. Okay, so why are we going Benediction these days over Improved Blessing of Might? The answer is because it's really hard to find the GCD to re-might yourself to get on top of the enemy. 9 times out of 10, you're basically forced to use Freedom to close with the enemy. We do have a combat sequence for deep Retribution Paladin specifically. When I get to that can definitely make use of might. You catch them with a grenade, and then you bubble the first piece of CC that comes your way. You sit on them for 10 seconds. After the 10 seconds, you repent them for 6 seconds. After the repent of the 6 seconds is over, the DR of the stun has reset, so then you can stun them for 6 seconds, and you can grenade them for another 1.5 seconds, and you do insane amounts of damage. When I get to that, I'll get to that, but here's the combat sequence right here. Here's the total number of attacks and everything that you can put into your enemy. And you can do that while having Blessing of Might on yourself. However, Blessing of Might is still, like 5 out of 5 Blessing of Might only increases it by 20%. Which means you only get like 35 attack power out of it at like level 60, even with the improved Blessing of Might that you get from like AQ 40. 35 attack power for 5 talent points might sound really good, but what ends up happening for Paladin, gearing-wise, is that you have to hit, especially for a deep ret Paladin, you have to hit like minimum mana requirements on your Paladin for you to be viable in combat for any length of time. And what Benediction really does for you is it helps you meet those mana requirements. It saves you an insane amount of mana over the course of your fighting. And what this effectively means, like, how do I put this? This is deeper than it looks. I'm trying to TLDR it, but it's really hard. Well, I guess it's hard for me at least. The TLDR is that often you have to choose as a paladin, you just need more mana and you know it. And subsequently you have to choose like this piece of gear with mana on it but less strength and critical strike over this other piece of gear that doesn't have mana on it but it has more strength on it. And since you have to choose the mana gear, you're losing strength, or you're losing attack power, you're losing critical strike. But if you took Benediction, you don't have to make that choice. You can take the higher DPS piece of gear. And so you end up getting improved Blessing of Might one way or the other, whether you know it or not, when you put 5 points into Benediction. So you always put 5 points into Benediction. Savix is devaluing, also here, he is devaluing parry chance. Which is really, really bad. Literally avoid Blessing of Might like it's the plague. Later on in your Paladin life cycle, you'll be using Blessing of Kings, or in Season of Discovery, as I get into more details, you'll actually be using Blessing of Light. You cannot afford a blessing of might on your paladin in Season of Discovery. So there's no point in putting talent points into it. Even when you could afford it in Era because you have tons of free GCDs, you still can't afford it. When you get cleanse, you're definitely not going to be able to afford it. It's not that you can't afford it. It's just it's not worth it. You take benediction. Benediction is worth a crap ton of intellect on your paladin, and then it allows you to gear with more strength and more critical strike, and you just end up getting the benefits of Blessing of Might at all times on your paladin. Anyways, so this is very old paladin thinking. Avoid it like the plague. Even currently in SOD, you're better off going Blessing of Light. I'm not joking, but we'll get to that when we get to that.
Addiction, if you want more mana or fighting melees, this is helpful. Every time you parry, you're going to swing back faster. But for my personal taste, I'm going to go with Benediction. And 5 Conviction, 2 Pursuit of Justice. If you do have the Arathi base and boots, you don't need to go into Pursuit of Justice because those don't stack. And you can finish Benediction or put a little bit into Deflection, depending on your taste. I'm going to assume that players don't have the boots yet since you need to get Revered. I'm going to put it into Pursuit of Justice for now. And a little tip for Seal of Command, if you read the bottom message, it says unleashing the seal's energy will judge an enemy, instantly causing 68 to 73 damage. But if the target is stunned or incapacitated, you'll do a lot more damage. And if this crits, it hits really hard. So make sure after you Hodge, you do a combination of Judgment into Exorcism or Judgment into Divine Storm, depending how many enemies there are, and your seal will hit hard. Also applies for your Repentance, since this is an end cap. Next 2 points, I'm going to go with Eye for an Eye to unlock the bottom 2. Eye for an Eye is really good right now. I've had Eye for an Eye proc a Shaman for like 800 damage or 500 on Boomkins. It actually hits back pretty damn hard because so many of the casters hit such big numbers, right?
He's not wrong about any of this.
It's really good. We're going to go with Sanctity Aura.
I'll pause the video here. So every Paladin PvP build that exists either takes Reckoning or it takes Eye for an Eye. And this is not going to change in Season of Discovery at all. In fact, it gets worse because Blizzard's been giving out Critical Strike to spellcasters as if it was candy. So, for example, if you're a Deep Holy Paladin, you're using Shock Eye, which means you have 31 points into Holy, and then you have 17 into Retribution, specifically to pick up 2 out of 2 Eye for an Eye. Then you have like 3 floating talent points left over that you usually put into Readout, but you can put them wherever the heck you want. And then, of course, Retribution has Eye for an Eye just built into it. Reckoning picks up both Reckoning and Eye for an Eye. Holy Reckoning has Reckoning, and then there's a hybrid Holy Reckoning build that has both Eye for an Eye, Reckoning, and it still can heal itself in combat because it has like 9-ish points in whatchamacallit. This is the build right here. It has 9 points in Holy, and basically you run around with improved concentration aura for 15% pushback immunity, and then this gives you 56% pushback immunity, so you have over 100% pushback immunity. You can strip a point out of here and put it into improved Hammer of Justice if that's your deal. It's seasoned to taste with that 1 talent point, but you can see we have 17 points into Retribution. We pick up Eye for an Eye. We have 5 out of 5 Reckoning, and we have the ability to go Concentration Aura and heal ourselves in combat. Absolutely terrifyingly amazing Reckoning build in Season of Discovery. Absolutely amazing. Okay, so Savix is going to continue talking about this, but he's going to miss something a little bit important around here. I'll let him finish, but it's the little details that you kind of need to know as a paladin, like the value of
specialization for more damage, and I'm gonna put 1 into Vindication to unlock Vengeance, and I'm just putting 1 just so that we get that 5% reduction, which is better than nothing, right? Like, do I really want mana or Deflect? Seal of Crusader, I'm really not going to use that in PvP because if I get CC'd, or it's like a waste of Judgment sometimes. You can still do it, but I tend to not use Seal of Crusader for now in PvP. So 1 into Vindication and then Repentance, and that's all 40.
Okay, so missing bits of information. These 3 talent points that increase the damage of your it says increases your weapon damage, your 200 weapon damage by 6%. It actually increases your seal damage by 6%, increases your white damage by 6%. It double dips on increasing Seal of Crusader damage. So, for example, it'll increase the white damage of your attack, and then with the Seal of Command procs, it'll also increase that by an additional 6%. So it increases judgment. It doesn't increase oil damage at all, but it affects judgment and then weapon attacks, which is or seals, which is really fascinating. So these 3 talent points do a lot for you. It works the same way for these 5 talent points in the protection tree. It says increase. Basically, it's like increase all weapon damage that you do. So seal, judgment, and then white damage by 10%. Seal of Command also double dips with Vengeance. Why is that? Because it does the exact same thing. It increases your white damage by 15%, and then when Command procs, it'll also increase that by an additional 15%. So it'll basically be like if you do 100 damage, it'll increase that to 115, and then when Command procs, it'll pump that up by another 16%. So it does like 30. It increases the damage of Seal of Command by like 31%, and then this thing over here increases it by like just under 13%. It's noteworthy how much it actually increases it. And of course, Vengeance doesn't double dip on the seal, but it does increase it by 10%. But this is where the real power of Seal of Command comes from as a Deep Retribution Paladin, is the synergy between these talent points here and leaning into it. It's also important to note that Seal of Command, unlike the only thing Seal of Command really has going for it over Seal of Martyrdom is the fact that she does have a 20% spell power ratio behind her. Her spell power ratio is 20% base, but then it's like plus 10% here, and plus 6% here, and then plus 15% there, and all those kind of compound with each other, and so at the end of the day, it ends up being like a plus 30% spell power ratio on Seal of Command. With Sheath of Light and the gear that you're going to be wearing, we haven't even talked about gearing yet. When Savix talks about Ret gear, I'll start talking about Ret gear. It starts going a little Super Saiyan. So be advised of where the real power of Deep Ret is. You will be using Seal of the Crusader because it lets you take Divine Storm. And with all these bonuses to Seal of Crusader, she actually becomes 100% legitimate, even in Seal of Discovery, over all the crazy stuff they've been doing to Seal of Martyrdom these days.
For PvP, I'm going to go with Divine Storm.
Now his runes aren't bad, but he's missing some critical rune elements here.
Crusader Strike, Sheet of Light, and this one you can argue going with Avengers Shield. I haven't played with Avengers Shield in a while because Exorcism just procs so often now, and it's a lot of damage. But if you're dueling against a really good kite class, you'll probably not benefit too much from Exorcism because you gotta proc Art of War to get a lot of damage going, right? So you can still use Avenger Shield and Sacred Shield combination.
Okay, cool.
I used to like Guarded by the Light a lot, but they made a change where you can't remove the Guarded by the Light buff, so it's kind of useless. All right, now we're gonna go with...
No.
So it's kind of useless.
Okay. Whew, thank God. Please don't talk about Reckoning. Just don't do it to me. Please, for the love of God. All right. We'll leave that for last. Okay, cool. His rune selection is not bad. Okay, I got to give it to him. He is correct. There are 3 rune options for you as a Deep Retribution Paladin, and he talked about 2 of them, but he doesn't really talk about the power of 2 of them. So let's scroll up and let's look at runes here for a second. You'll be talking about gear here in a moment. Okay, so the math basically on Exorcism is that, and I like looking at things at level 60 because while you're leveling in Season of Discovery, or not leveling in Season of Discovery, while we're in the non-60 phases, you have no idea like, oh, is this rank up to date? Is this rank out of date? Blah, 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 blah. So it's really hard to get a comparison of what the value of a given rune is. It's also important to note, and this is me dipping into the gearing side of things a little bit, that every class in the game has access to their BIS PvP gear in Season of Discovery in these phases while leveling, right? Like the spellcasters have stamina intellect gear, the hunters have access to agility, stamina attack power gear, the warriors have their strength, agility, stamina gear. Everyone has access to their BIS PvP gear, except paladins. Paladins do not currently have access to their BIS PvP gear in the game. Blizzard, for some reason, keeps thinking in terms of retail, which is a mistake in classic World of Warcraft. And what do I mean by that? I mean they think our ret gear is the same as warrior gear. It's not. This is for PvP, right? In PvE, they're absolutely correct. You wear the same gear as warriors do. But in PvP has significantly different requirements behind it. It's significantly more stamina than anything else. They give us so either we wear warrior gear, hooray, or we wear a stamina, intellect, spell power, plate gear, which not even deep holy paladins are happy wearing stamina, intellect, plate gear in classic World of Warcraft. It's terrible. It's dog shit. What the fuck are you doing? Okay, our BIS PvP gear, mathematically, and you can see it up here, even when you factor in Sheath of Light, because I did all this math factoring in Sheath of Light in Wowhead. Our BIS PvP gear is, and always has been, the all stats gear. So you want strength, you want stamina, you want intellect, you want critical strike chance, and you want spell power. You want everything. And if you can't get all of that, you basically just want a piece of gear that's like, 20 all stats gear. So basically, your rank gear is ideal Paladin PvP gear. Avengers is ideal Paladin PvP gear. And there's a lot of gear out there that has the Crusader moniker on it. That is ideal Paladin gear. That's plate mail gear with like strength, stamina, blah, 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 blah. When I start talking about runes, believe it or not, in Season of Discovery, you don't even want spell power gear. Your BIS PvP gear is actually going to be something close to the Tier 1 set in Classic World of Warcraft. I'm not joking about this. The Tier 1 set in Classic World of Warcraft in Season of Discovery is absolutely not fucking around. If I could wear that gear scaled up to Nax Ramus, like Tier 3 gear, I would. Like, what the hell is it? It is a strength, stamina, intellect, suit with tons of spirit on it, which is actually better than MP5, believe it or not. But more importantly, rather than spell power, the suit has plus healing. It's considered some of the worst PvP gear in Classic World of Warcraft for Paladin ever. But in Season of Discovery, it's actually your BIS PvP gear. I'm not joking about this. The reason for this is because Sacred Shield is absolutely not fucking around in Season of Discovery. And we're going to talk about that. We'll talk about that in a second. Is that a dog? What's going on here? Oh, hi, puppy. Are you okay? Being a weirdo. Okay. So let's talk about runes. My Pallytime. Why is that? Well, we'll talk about Sacred Shield here in a moment. Okay, so let's talk about the value of Exorcism. But we're going to talk about it from a level 60 perspective while wearing proper Paladin PvP gear, which is going to be your hybrid gear. So that's going to be your Avengers. That's going to be your hybrid gear. Your hybrid gear uses a mix of, it's like between 3 to 4 pieces of Avengers gear, because Avengers is perfectly statted PvP gear for Paladin. It has everything on it. It's got melee, it's got spell power, critical strike, intellect, strength. It's got everything you want in your gearing, period, end of story. And you can see here that with Sheath of Light, your plus healing gets quite high, your spell power gets quite high. Everything is just amazing in the hybrid gear. Do not leave home without it. If you try to build up a paladin using non-hybrid gear, and you try to build them out like a warrior, like paladins used to do, it's not going to be anywhere near as effective as just wearing the hybrid gear. Okay, so let's talk Exorcism here for a second. What the hell is the value of Exorcism? Well, Exorcism is basically just increasing your DPS. And Paladin gearing is very... She's best thought of in terms of breakpoints. One sec, let me clean my glasses here. It's actually pissing me off. It's best talked about in terms of breakpoints. Because the way DPS works for Paladin is... you either have enough DPS to kill your target or you don't. And when you don't have enough DPS to kill your target, the value of DPS is extremely high. Anything that's going to increase your DPS when you don't have enough DPS is extremely high. But once you hit enough DPS to get the job done, the value of DPS basically goes into the gutter, right? You don't need more DPS at that point. All you're gaining from additional DPS past the point of having enough DPS is RNG protection, right? It was so like 1 out of 4 times you engage somebody in combat, and this is just how math works. One of them is gonna low roll, like mathematically, you're gonna get a bad RNG lay, and then 2 of them will be dead average or very close to dead average, and then 1 of them will be like an above average RNG lay for you while you're attacking that class. If you have enough having enough DPS means that 3 out of 4 times you engage the target, you have more than enough DPS to kill them, like mathematically speaking. And then all you gain past that point is like a little bit of RNG protection, so that, you know, maybe like 1 out of 12 times you engage the target, you low rolled on RNG, but you still had enough DPS to get the job done anyways because you overstacked a DPS. The point is, she has extreme value, and then she hits a breakpoint, and then her value starts crashing past that breakpoint. And in Season of Discovery, they've given us so much DPS that it becomes we're honestly butt naked as a paladin. You probably have more than enough DPS to get the job done, which is kind of fascinating. Also, what will dictate whether or not you have enough DPS is your combat sequence. Like what are we doing to our enemies to maximize our DPS, our time on target, our blah 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 blah, right? So that becomes important. Savix doesn't mention any of this whatsoever, which is kind of weird. But you know, the ultimate PvP guide. Oh boy. Okay. So anyways, I'm going to give you the missing information from the Savix guide. All right, so what are we doing here? Right, Exorcism. Okay, so the value of Exorcism in proper Paladin PvP gear at level 60 is plus 65 DPS. That's just if you take the Exorcism rune and then nothing else, right? And of course, we can't tell what how valuable that is based upon blah 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 yet. Is it super important? Then we need to take that extra DPS. Did we already hit our DPS breakpoint? Well, then it's basically useless, and it's just icing on the cake. What Art of War is doing for you is that every 20% melee critical strike chance you have in Season of Discovery is basically doubling the effect of Exorcism. And you might be like, how the hell did you mathematically calculate that? It was painful, but I did, and it's still a very rough mathematical calculation. So, for example, Divine Storm and Crusader Strike are effectively doubling the amount of auto attacks flowing out of you at any given moment. And then when you factor in Seal of Command and potentially proccing it, and then what the hell else do I want here? You're using ideally as a deep Retribution Paladin, you're using like a 3.5 speed weapon. So specifically, that would be like a Dark Edge of Insanity. Ashkandi is very close to that, and it is perfectly viable. What else is there to say? Right, and then there's also all the miss chance and dodge chance and parry chance. Not so much miss, but you get the idea of the enemy failing auto attacks. And in the grand scheme of things, you're basically doubling the amount of auto attacks, proc chances flowing out of you. And if you start doing the math on that very quickly, about 20% melee critical strike chance is worth a doubling in the effect of the amount of exorcism damage that's flowing out of you. There's also, and apparently there's no diminishing returns here, really. That math already calculates diminishing returns. So if you suddenly went from 20% melee critical strike chance to 40% melee critical strike chance, it changes nothing. Literally, 20% melee crit for Art of War, you're going to double what exorcism value is, and then if you went up to 40%, you would triple it. It's already factored in the diminishing return aspect to it. This is also very handy and nifty to have because the 2 best Paladin PvP gearings you can possibly get have between 20 and roughly a 20% critical strike chance. So the math lines up super, super nice and super, super easy for us to comprehend. Okay, cool. But the Art of War, the Exorcism rune is opportunity costed against anything else that you could take in that slot. So it's, as Savix points out, it's opportunity costed against Avengers Shield, and as I'm going to add to it, it's opportunity costed against taking Rebuke. And it's only in looking at your combat sequence that you're going to really be able to tell what is better. Is it better to take Avengers Shield, or is it better to take Rebuke, or and they're only looking at your DPS will you be able to know whether or not you take Exorcism Rune. But the combat sequence will also tell you that as well. Then Art of War, of course, is opportunity costed against Sacred Shield. And Sacred Shield basically blows Art of War Rune out of the fucking water times 10. She is a much, much better rune choice for you as a paladin in PvP than Art of War. There really isn't even a contest between the two of them. The only thing that would make Art of War even remotely as good as Sacred Shield is if for some reason you desperately needed the DPS. But then you start having questions of, okay, so you took the Exorcism Rune, which means you denied yourself Avengers Shield or Rebuke, which is really, really bad. And now you're doubling down on it because apparently you need even more DPS with the Art of War rune. Like, what the hell are we doing here? And you could be saying to yourself, well, I need that Art of War DPS to be able to cut down enemy healers that are hard casting in your face. But then the question becomes, okay, well, why don't you have Rebuke? Like, you're just going to tell them to shut the hell up, and you use Seal of Justice to tell them to shut the hell up, and, just look at the combat sequence. You don't need it. So the TLDR here is that you actually don't need Exorcism as a Deep Retribution Paladin, the Exorcism rune, and you definitely do not need the Art of War rune as a Deep Retribution Paladin. You're far better off taking Rebuke or Avengers Shield and then Sacred Shield, and that's because you probably have plenty of DPS already, and the combat sequence is much, much, much better with either Avengers Shield or with Rebuke. Okay, so let's talk about why the runes are good. There's too many elements at play here to TLDR this. So I'm going to give you all the information, but just know that you might not get it in the order that you prefer. Okay? So you might have a question right now like, Pallytime, you keep talking about this combat sequence. Please talk about the combat sequence. I'm confused. It's like, no. We'll get there in a second. We got to talk about why Sacred Shield is so amazing right here. Okay, so a lot of people don't know that Sacred Shield actually has a spell power ratio behind it. It has a spell power ratio behind it very similar to what Flash of Light has. It has a 0.43% spell power ratio behind her, which means at level 60, she's probably going to have about a 200 HP base shield, and then she also has a 43% spell power ratio behind her that increases the strength of that shield. And you can see here with 200 spell power, so that means basically that's you not having Sheath of Light. She's going to be a 300 HP shield at level 60. And then if you did take Sheath of Light and it is active, it'll be about 400 spell power, or my bad. She'll be about, at around about 400 spell power, she'll be about a 400 HP shield. Those are very rough estimates, and it's there because the two best gearing options that you have for Paladin, with Sacred Shield, they have really high plus healing. Like, this is 480 plus healing. This is 410. If you didn't want the plus healing gear, you would swap that out for spell power gear instead. So the spell power here would be closer to like 450-ish spell power. Blah, 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 blah. And of course, this one has the hybrid gear has significantly less spell power. But interestingly, she doesn't have that much less plus healing, which is kind of interesting. Okay. In my personal opinion, the hybrid gear is by far the best gear to go into combat with, and so since that has close to 400 plus healing, that's the number that I chose to use. But just know that this would be even more if it was blah, 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 blah. And of course, these HPS numbers are literally just the shield and nothing else going on. Okay, but Sacred Shield does a lot more than just give you an HPS buff. She also helps increase your stamina pool for surviving enemy bursts. If the enemy takes more than 6 seconds to burst you out of existence, then of course it doubles its effectiveness. And then of course there's the hot effect on it, which is down here. So it reads as Sacred Shield plus Sheath of Light hot. So if you crit heal yourself, Sheath of Light will put a hot on you. If Sacred Shield is active on you and the bubble hasn't been popped and you Flash of Light yourself, it gives you like a 50% increased critical strike chance on that Flash of Light. And then with your base critical strike chance, spell critical strike, and the hybrid gear does have a lot of spell critical strike on it, believe it or not. That ends up spiking up considerably. So you're virtually, like 2 flashes of light, you're guaranteed to get one of them to crit. It's very easy to find space and room for you to do a double flash of light. And when they crit, when you get this flash of light hot healing on yourself with Sacred Shield and Sheath of Light, holy crap, is it worth its weight in gold. For the next 12 seconds at 250 spell power or plus healing, you have like 124 HPS. What the fuck? If you got like 450 spell power or plus healing, and again, that's in line with these numbers up here, you have like 140 HPS. It's like, Jesus fucking Christ. The value of Sacred Shield is insane and intense. Even without the hot effect on it, she's fucking amazing, and she's probably better for you than Art of War or than Exorcism. Meaning, if you're a paladin and you took Exorcism rune, but you didn't take Art of War, you took Sheath of Light instead, I would not condemn this whatsoever. At all, because I know that Sacred Shield's base value is so extremely high that it's probably better than Art of War, period, end of story. Let me check to make sure we're still recording here. Paranoid. Jesus, right? So Art of War is very bad in my estimation compared to Sacred Shield. And then you start getting good at the game, and you start realizing that, especially as a deep ret paladin that has a lot of control behind her, it's like, oh, you activated my Sacred Shield. Let me just CC you really fast and get a flash of light into myself. Watch it crit almost 100% of the time. Get that hot rolling for the next 12 seconds. I am a fucking god. It's absolutely amazing, and it lines up with your combat sequence, your ideal combat sequence, extremely well. So Sacred Shield, TLDR here is that Sacred Shield plus Sheath of Light absolutely blows Art of War out of the fucking water. The only way Art of War is even remotely viable as a rune slot to take as a paladin in PvP is if for some reason you still desperately need the DPS. But you're not going to, so what the hell are we even talking about here? Okay, so let's look at it in terms of your combat sequence. This is something else that Savix doesn't even bother mentioning, which is really, really bad, because whether things are good or bad will depend upon your gear. It'll depend upon more detailed information about the runes and in conjunction with the gearing. And of course, it will depend upon your combat sequence that your bread and butter combat sequence as a deep Retribution Paladin or a Reckoning Paladin. So, for example, Reckoning Paladins greatly devalue Sheath of Light. They don't devalue Sacred Shield, but they greatly devalue Sheath of Light because you need to touch someone in order to activate Sheath of Light. And the sheer act of touching someone for a Reckoning Paladin usually means they died. So it's like, what the fuck am I doing with Sheath of Light? This is kind of stupid. But the hot is super valuable for like a Holy Reckoning build or a time on target build there. But the 40-yard range judgment is so amazing from a tactical and perspective for Reckoning that you're probably just better off taking it. But that's because Reckoning has a completely different combat sequence than a Retribution Paladin does. Like they're bread and buttered completely differently, and so they value runes differently. But they'll still take Sacred Shield. They just won't take Sheath of Light most of the time. I'm still working on figuring out if we can even fit Sheath of Light in, or do we even want it for Reckoning. It's rather complicated. Oh, the other value of we'll look at the combat sequence here. But it's also important to note that Avengers Shield. So Exorcism is opportunity costed against Avengers Shield or Rebuke specifically. Now, we're going to see the value of Rebuke here in a second. But I want to talk about the value of Avengers Shield. So Avengers Shield lets you catch people. It lets you execute the more terrifying and the more deadly Retribution combat sequence. You can see I have 2 Retribution combat sequences here. I have an alternate combat sequence, and then I have your super deadly combat sequence. Avengers Shield lets you execute the more deadly combat sequence far more efficiently. and far more consistently, but it's not necessary for you as a deep ret paladin. The other thing that she does for you that's not mentioned is that she frees up a trinket slot, if you really think about it, right? So rather than you needing to have Goblin Mortar and Gnomish Netomatic to be a really good Retribution Paladin, all of a sudden you don't need that Gnomish Netomatic anymore, and that can be replaced with like a Jom Gobber's Trinket or a Zandalar, a Hero's Charm, or something very DPS bursty oriented for an offensive trinket. And that is a huge devaluing of the Exorcism rune in the grand scheme of things, if you're following me on this. So Avengers Shield probably is the way to go. At level 40, we don't have access to any good PvP trinkets, but at level 50 and beyond, we will. And that'll take the value of Exorcism rune and basically just put it in the trash. Yeah, so it is what it is. So the future of the Exorcism rune looks bleak, and the future and Art of War is just terrible. Stay away from it. All right, let's look at your base combat sequence here. I'm going to get a drink of water. Make sure I'm still recording. Yep, we're recording. Paranoid. Yeah. Okay. So the ideal combat sequence for you as a Retribution Paladin is for you to catch your enemy with a grenade, and this is plenty of time for you to run over there and for you to get one auto attack into them before they come out of the stun. And what's important about that is you get to judge into them for ×2 damage, like Savix said. But you can do one auto attack, one Crusader Strike, and then you can judge damage into them. The next thing you want to do is you want to bubble the very first bit of CC or incoming burst that's happening. So if it's like a shaman, for example, that they might just decide to charge up like, you know, a lava burst or their chain lightning blast combo in your face, and just bubble the first thing that you don't like coming your way. The reason for this is twofold. The first is that you still do a crap ton of DPS in Season of Discovery while in bubble. Because you can keep Crusader striking on them, you can keep judging them, you can keep auto attacking them, you can keep divine storming them. It's really gross. You can see it right here, just what the 10 seconds of bubble will give you. Yes, it increases. 1 second. Hey, quiet. Hey, shut up. Be good boys. Okay. No. Hey. No. It's like 6 a.m. Shut up. Hey. Yeah, I know people are out there. They're going to work. Relax. Got 2 puppy Yorkies here. They're learning still. All right. Okay. Tomato, shut up. Oh, my goodness. I'll just let him bark. I don't care anymore. Okay. Where are we at? Yeah, so the reason why you don't do this in Classic WoW is all it gives you is like 2 auto attacks and then like a +1 judgment. And I'm about to beat you up. All right, 1 second. Pause the video. Okay, we're back. Damn, he seriously did not get the message there for a while. Holy crud. He's like, wow, 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 wow. Joe, I hear things. Joe, help, Joe. I'm like, seriously? All right, so we didn't do this in Classic World of Warcraft because it's a terrible idea. You got, you only get 2 auto attacks out of bubble, and you get like +1 judgment, and it's like whoop-de-effing do. But in Season of Discovery, you can do like 2 Divine Storms and 2 Crusader Strikes into that mix. That's basically a full Wreck Bomb. That's like, what? And on top of that, against enemy healers, you can rebuke them and tell them to shut the hell up. And you can very easily get Seal of Justice procs off of Divine Storms and Crusader Strikes to further interrupt enemy healing. So it's suddenly a very viable thing to do in Season of Discovery, whereas it wasn't really a viable thing to do in original like Classic era. This is a terrible idea to do, but in Season of Discovery, this is basically your BIS routine. Right. So that's the first reason you're doing it. The second reason you're doing it is because you need about 15 to 16 seconds to reset the DR on something. Excuse me, puppy dog. Shut up. Holy crud. Anyways, you need about 16 seconds to reset the DR on grenade. So for example, if you grenade stun someone 16 seconds after the stun wears off, the DR will reset. I'm going to pause the video again. I'm going to beat his ass. I'll be right back. All right, we're back. He got paddled pretty bad again. Jesus. I think part of the problem is the wife is away. Like literally, she left at like 4 a.m. That's kind of why I'm up in the grand scheme of things. And so he's hearing noises outside, and he's like, Joe, 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 it's mommy, help, help, help. She's trapped out there or something. And it's like, Jesus, let me just... But I still need to train him not to bark at noises and stuff at night. So it just is what it is. So he's getting paddled. He's probably going to be a super unhappy dog for a while, but I got to finish this video. It just is what it is. All right, spend at least 10. Right, so because Repent doesn't share a cooldown, a diminishing return cooldown with the stuns. So the combination of the 10-second bubble and the 6-second Repent mean that it's going to reset, right? In the previous video that I made to this one, I literally show it at the beginning of the video, but I was super tired in that video, so I'm kind of like, oh, blah, 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 wreck guy, blah. Terrible. We'll do better on this one, obviously. Got some sleep in me, which is nice. Yeah, so that's the main reason why you're doing it is because by the time you come out of the bubble and by the time the Repent is over with, you can actually hodge stun them for 6 seconds and then grenade stun them for another 1.5 seconds, and it's absolutely disgusting. And you can see the full sequence right here. There are two options with your runes. Option one is that you have Rebuke. Rebuke will shut down any hardcast healing, especially in conjunction with Seal of Justice. You can think about the time sequence for yourself if you want. So, for example, you bubble on them, and they're like, oh, okay, well, if he's going to sit and bubble, I'm just going to hard cast heals into myself. They start casting a heal for 2 seconds, then you rebuke them for 3 seconds, so 5 seconds have gone by. Then they start casting for another 2 seconds, so, 7 seconds have gone by. And then you basically Crusader Strike them or Divine Storm them, and you auto-attack. You have to learn to hold your one of your auto-attacks to try to use Seal of Justice to stun them. You'll have about a 70% chance to stun them with like a Crusader Strike and an auto attack. But even if that fails, you can actually just repent them early. It's not the worst thing in the world. You just end up having to wait like an extra 3 seconds or so after the repent ends before you can actually hodge stun them, which is not ideal. But you still have an incredibly likely chance to shut down any hardcast healing from enemy spellcaster. Even if they get the heal off, it's probably not enough, which is actually quite fascinating in the grand scheme of things. But it's actually terrifying to take Rebuke. It basically shuts down enemy hardcast heals the vast majority of the time. The other thing, of course, is that you could theoretically take Exorcist and Art of War and just try to out-damage what they're doing and maybe interrupt one of their hardcast heals with a Seal of Justice stun. The Seal of Justice stuns on a separate DR than the other stuns. So the first stun is 2 seconds and the second one is like 1 second. And then it goes into oblivion from there. But it doesn't it won't mess around with the Justice stun at all. Anyways, highly advised that you take Rebuke. You have plenty of damage, even without Exorcism to get the job done. The other option, of course, is Avengers Shield. Avengers Shield, what she does for you, and we'll talk about that in the alternate sequence down here. So the alternate sequence is that you grenade stun them to try to catch them, but the enemy PvP trinketed, in which case you Gnomish Net-O-Matic or you run away for 15 seconds until the DR is reset, and then you catch them with Goblin Mortar, and you do the primary sequence over again. If you have Avengers Shield instead, you suddenly don't need that Gnomish Net-O-Matic, and you can replace it with a more DPS centric trinket. So that would be like Scrolls of Blinding Light come to mind, Jom Gobbers comes to mind, Zandalar Hero Charm or the like would come to mind, although I don't think you get to make much use out of that. It's more of a defensive trinket. But you could use a really scary, just raw DPS trinket in its place of Gnomish Net-O-Matic, and you can just very easily catch them. The more ideal catch routine is to open with Avengers Shield, and then start closing on the target. And if they PvP trinket the Avengers Shield slow away from them, because they don't want you anywhere near on top of them, then you grenade stun them, and you're right into your normal combat sequence again. You can also open with a Gnomish Net-O-Matic. Gnomish, she only has a 20% fail chance for Paladins. I tested it 100 times while I was ranking. I was doing was turning in dust and Silithist while ranking on Era, so I bothered to test her 100 times. She has like a 20% whiff chance for Paladins in the grand scheme of things, where she just roots you in place and does nothing to the enemy. Everything else is perfectly viable for Paladin combat. Yeah, but Avengers Shield, what am I trying to say here? Yeah, there's no trinketing out of Gnomish Net-O-Matic. Either you freed him out of it, or you escape artist out of it, or there's nothing else will work. So she's a big boy. Yeah. So those are your options. You take Exorcist, you take Rebuke, or you take Avengers Shield, and you can very easily do this combat routine. I'm a much bigger. I would prefer you to take Rebuke over Avengers Shield, believe it or not. And the main reason for that is because of the alternative strategy here, which is you just run away for 15 seconds until the DR is off cooldown. Like, duh, right? So it's like, this sounds terrible, but it's actually bread and butter for deep Retribution Paladin. If you watch Venruki versus the Drakova duel, you can see how often he's using Repent just to run away and get some more healing. Buying time as a deep Retribution Paladin is usually worth its weight in gold. Buying time as any Paladin is usually worth its weight in gold, and deep Retribution Paladin is by far no exception to that. So it's like, if you can just run away for 15 seconds and get the same effect as having a Gnomish Net-O-Matic, then do it. Or you don't have to take Avengers Shield anymore. Now you can take Rebuke, and you can really stick it to the enemy spellcasters. Like, what the hell are we doing? So I prefer Rebuke. I prefer Rebuke. All right, cool. What else is there to say about this? Yeah, you do shit tons of damage. Because you're going to Hodge stun them for 6 seconds, yada, yada, yada. There is a potential counter to this from enemy players. They might get around to doing it eventually, where they actually hold their PvP trinket specifically during this entire sequence to get rid of your Hodge stun. So they'll trinket out of your Hodge stun after all this Repent nonsense, leaving you with maybe able to grenade stun them for like 1.5 seconds and your bubble is down and all that stuff. And at that point, you lose a considerable amount of DPS, but it's still not as much as you would think. And the enemy has probably, honestly, already been cut to pieces at that point, so it's not that big of a deal. Also, if you did the whole, I'm going to do the 15-second runaway from the enemy plan, you don't need Gnomish Net-O-Matic anymore. Because you didn't take Gnomish Net-O-Matic, you have two options. You can either take that DPS trinket I keep blathering away about, or you can take PvP trinket, and so they PvP trinket Hodge stun, they try to CC you and get some heals off. You trinket whatever the hell it is that they hit you with, and you're just back on them doing DPS. One of those two probably will get the job done in the grand scheme of things. If it's a Warlock, you use Mithril Insignia, gives you 30 seconds of fear immunity. There's basically nothing, like, all they could really do is like PvP, like nade stun you and get some distance. It's not ideal for them at all. Because you could still easily catch them with the Goblin Mortar is what I want to say. Ugh. You can also put Frost Oil on your Paladin, which pretty much guarantees to put a slow on them during the sequence, which really helps the Goblin Mortar do its job. So, for example, they let's say the Warlock fears you, but you because that's the worst case scenario. The Warlock trinkets the Hodge, then goes for a fear on you. You Mithril Insignia the fear. So now you're immune to the fear. He sees the Mithril Insignia, so he goes, all right, fine, whatever. I'll just grenade stun you. You don't have bubble anymore. You're not PvP trinket, so you're sitting this grenade stun for 3 seconds. If you have a Frost Oil proc on him, he's only going to be able to run away for 1.5 seconds from you, which is not far enough away. And then even your Goblin Mortar stunning him for 1.5 seconds at that point is more than enough for you to close right back on top of him and start continue giving him the business. Pointers are not going anywhere. Yep. And you could also just have Gnomish Net-O-Matic still. And at that point, it's like you're eating the fear at that point, so you can't Gnomish Net-O-Matic. I'm trying to think of the worst case scenario and what the best possible course of action for the enemy is, but it's actually to hold their PvP trinket for the 6-second Hodge stun, period, end of story. But even then, you probably did enough damage to kill them in the grand scheme of things, just because this bubble damage without letting people heal is basically a wreck bomb, which is absolutely terrifying. And then it's backed up by even more damage after the repent. And then even if they Hodge HOJ stun you, or even if they trinket the HOJ, you still have like 1.5 seconds to do some terrible, terrible things to them, which means they're still taking another auto attack. They're probably still taking another Divine Storm or another Crusader Strike. It's really gross. All right, anyway, so that's your bread and butter sequence that you're always trying to do on the enemy as Deep Red Paladin. You are always trying to operate to get this sequence in on the enemy, and it's up to your opponents to try to counter you. Another great counter here that's not mentioned is you notice that we haven't used any potions whatsoever. You come out of the stun, you activate a swiftness potion. The Warlock is not happy because he can't fear you. He can't stun you anymore. You're just going to get. He has to activate his own swiftness potion, which is not ideal. Odds are, again, if he has a frost oil proc on him, and he will have a frost oil proc on him, he's still not going anywhere. It's just bad time. Plenty of counters here. The other thing I wanted to mention is you could not take the Goblin Mortar trinket and instead take Gnomish Nanomatic. So, for example, if you're fighting a Warlock, you don't take Goblin Mortar. You just take Gnomish Nanomatic, and then you take Mythal Insignia trinket. If he trinkets the HOJ stun, you just and then grenades you just sit the grenade stun, and you just catch him with Gnomish Nanomatic. And he's completely boned. You do lose a considerable amount of damage by removing Goblin Mortar from the equation, but Gnomish Nanomatic is probably not going to fail you, and it's probably just going to give you like an 80% win rate against every Warlock and their dog, because they're trapped in a net for damn near 20 seconds while you're giving them while you're immune to fears for 30 seconds. Like Jesus Christ! After you've already done all this stuff to them, they're super fucking dead. So worst case scenario is you drop a Goblin Mortar and you just start putting on Gnomish Nanomatic, and because Gnomish Nanomatic will get the job done 100% of the time. Absolutely no way around it. Not 100% of the time, 80% of the time. Okay, cool. All right, where are we? What are we talking about? All right, so that's almost all the important information that Savix misses. He's going to start talking about gearing stuff here, so I'm going to let him blather away about the gear. The ultimate PvP guide, SoD. Blah, 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 blah. Ultimate Paladin guide. Ultimate, yes. All right, so he's going to start talking about his gearing, and he's going to make some super critical mistakes that are super important and we'll need to talk about. But I'll let Savix blather away for that for a while, and Jesus Christ, we still have to do the Reckoning build. I'll probably end the video without talking about the Reckoning stuff, and I'll probably just start up a new video specifically on the Reckoning stuff, because I'm going to get triggered. And I'll just need more time to talk about that. Okay, so let's go to the PvP gear side of things. All right, cool. And go.
All right.
No.
Defend,
No.
escape, Endless roguelite gameplay. Endless Engine.
Endless. I like that.
Hitting
That's
my
cool.
record button once again because I totally forgot about the PvP build. For PvP, I recommend a slower weapon. Either use the Dermaplug or Bloodlight Avenger. I prefer the Bloodlight Avenger because it's a slower weapon and has that increased holy spell damage effect. And the reason why you want a slower weapon is because you benefit more from Seal of Command. The slower the weapon, the higher chance to proc. The maximum weapon speed is 4, I believe, and 46.67% chance to proc more on hit. And now for the gearing. It's a little bit tricky. Everything dies super fast. SOD is very bursty, and relatively we want to kill things faster too. And Blizzard increased our HP pool in PvP zones, such as Battleground or STV. And honestly, I've been just rocking my PvE gear.
Bad
if
idea.
it bothers you, you can definitely go for more stamina gear.
Good
I
idea.
recommend going for the hazard set. Yet if you want to just kill other things faster,
Actually,
such
it's
as
a bad
other
idea.
classes, just wear your PvE set, change the weapon, and have fun.
No.
And lastly, I'll talk about a consumable.
Oh boy. Okay. So The gearing guide is awful. All right? His gearing advice for Retribution Paladin and Season of Discovery is absolutely fucking terrible. But the mistake makes sense because he's not taking Sheath of Light. All right, so here's the information that he's missing about classic World of Warcraft Paladin gearing in general. So I've said it before, I'll say it again, but a lot of people don't understand this about Paladin specifically in World of Warcraft. The difference between a butt-naked Paladin with like a two-handed weapon, like the best possible two-handed weapon for you, and a fully geared PvP DPS geared Paladin, the difference in DPS between those two Paladins is literally between 20 and 25% DPS gains. Now, I know that sounds stupid. So what I'm basically trying to tell you is that every piece of PvP gear that you put on your Paladin, let me pull up something like this, right? Every piece of gear here that you put on your PvP Paladin, okay, is only worth about a 2% DPS increase. And I'm not joking about that. It's the amount of DPS increase that you get from all of your gear in PvP is virtually non-existent. Like, literally, if I stripped off all this gear, like, when I have on all this gear, you can see it really, really fast here, right? I should be doing about 150-ish DPS. Let's look at our... Damn it, where's melee? Okay, melee, attack power, damage. Okay. Yeah, I'm doing about 150 melee damage. This gear is not super well optimized. I was trying to do the hybrid gear, but it like bugged out, so I can't change anything anymore. Wowhead doesn't like me, I guess, or they got some bug issues. It just is what it is. It's been like that for days, so I just can't alter things. You can see the HP is actually quite low. There's a few pieces I need to swap out to get to the 6,000 mark that you saw before. I think it drops a couple of Avengers pieces, and it picks up rank gear in its place, which is also very good all stats gear, and this pops up to like 6,000, and some other stats go down accordingly. I think this has 21% critical strike chance. 21% critical strike chance, melee. Yeah, when it should have only 20% critical strike chance, but it gains significantly in the HP department. So I was trying to get this together for the video, but I couldn't. Now, I've done the math in far greater detail on this subject. I've literally done the math, so I've looked at the judgments, I've looked at the exorcisms, the value of the increase in spell power, and all that stuff, blah, 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 blah. For example, Exorcism's base damage is butt naked is at level 60 is like 550. When you go, it only has a 40% spell power ratio, so by the time you go up like 450 spell power, the next thing, it only increases it by like from 550 to like 250. It's not that big of a DPS increase, and that's with Sheath of Light. So you might be thinking, Pallytime, what are you talking about? That's like a 40% DPS increase. That's a massive DPS increase for Exorcism. That's with Sheath of Light giving you an extra 200 spell power, right? Without Sheath of Light active, it's like a 20% DPS increase. This is just what it is. This is just what it is in class. This is a weird thing about classic World of Warcraft Paladin gearing. Okay, it's a very important thing for you to understand. So you can see our damage is almost 150. Watch me strip off all this gear and just put on a Might of Minithil. So it's about 150. Just take my word for that. It's about 150 DPS. 150 DPS with like a 20% critical strike chance is what the... and like close to 700 attack power is what the hybrid gear has. As stated before, this one has less stamina, but as you can see, it has 44% more attack power. Let me reset this because it will actually work all of a sudden. And I'm just gonna put on a Might of Minithil and nothing else. So now we are a butt naked Paladin. We don't even have enchants. And I'll factor in enchants and everything else. I'll factor in, like, Blessing of Might or Kings and all that stuff. I've done the math on this before. This is just a terrible, 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 awful, no good way of looking at things. I'll even put an enchant on there. But in theory, I should put on, like, terrible, non-existent stat white gear. I should throw on the enchants just to show you what a butt-naked Paladin DPS actually looks like. I'm just showing you very roughly that this is just a weird quirk of classic World of Warcraft. I will throw on the talents really fast here. just so we can get the extra 5% critical strike and nothing else going on. I'll put 5 points into that for shits and giggles. Sure, I'll pick up the precision just if you want to see it. Now let's just see what happens. Okay, what's our DPS look like now? Our damage should be close to about 130, and as you can see here, it's like 126. By the time you put on get the enchants factored in, she will pop up to about 130 DPS. Okay, what about the critical strike chance loss? Critical strike for melee is now only 12.5%. By the time you get on all the enchants, it'll be up to like a 13% critical strike chance. That is why the tier 2 build and the tier 3 build have 13% critical strike with a Might of Minithil. It's because they actually have the enchants factored in, but they have no critical strike gains whatsoever on their gearing. So it's 13%, which means that the totality of this gear, all the gear on your Paladin, the totality of it, it increased our DPS by... I need 150 divided by 130 equals... fuck off. Okay, I didn't do that right. 130 divided by 150 equals... Okay, so that's about a 15% DPS increase. Let's double check that. 130... no, clear. 130 times 1.15. Let's see if it gets up to 150. It does. Okay. So all that attack power did for us was increase our white damage by 15%. That's what I just did the math on there, right? I went from 130 DPS to 150 white DPS. Now keep in mind that everything like Crusader Strike and Divine Storm and everything goes, your judgment, yeah, it all goes off of your command procs. All is based off of your white damage. You follow me on this, right? I already did the spell power. For you, it's a little bit better with Sheath of Light, but all of that also goes off of all of your attack damage and your gearing and so forth and so on. So you gain almost nothing, is what I'm trying to say. Okay, literally we gained 15% increased damage from all the strength gear and all the attack power gear on our Paladin from just being butt naked with a Might of Minithil. Okay, cool. You follow me on that? However, we did gain a considerable amount of critical strike chance. We gained 7% critical strike chance. Oh, boy. All right, so let's do the math on that real fast. Let's say my base damage is 100%. Okay. Our base is 100, whatever the hell that is. And then I multiply that by 15%. Okay, cool. That's our attack power gains. And then I multiply that by an additional 7%, and that is our critical strike gains. Okay, cool. You can see that, just like I promised you, you gain between 20 and 25% damage from all your fucking gearing on your Paladin outside of a two-handed weapon, right? So, butt naked, with the difference between you being a butt naked Paladin with a two-handed weapon and you being a fully DPS PvP geared Paladin with a two-handed weapon is a whopping like 23%, 25% DPS increase. That's not a lot. Okay? That's not a lot. Look at me. That's not a lot. And then in Season of Discovery, what Blizzard has basically done is they've given us shit tons of extra damage. They've given us so much damage that you're probably already DPS capped for your Paladin, butt naked with a good two-handed weapon. What this means is that in Season of Discovery, the first thing you need to check both as a deep Retribution Paladin and as a Reckoning Paladin is, do I do enough damage butt naked with no gear whatsoever and just a decent two-handed weapon? Is my DPS efficient with that and nothing else going on? With the proper runes and the proper everything. You don't concern yourself, and it's very easy to test. You just find a friend in PvP. You like grab like not a shaman. You grab like a priest, or you grab like a druid, and you just say, hey, just stand there and heal yourself as best as you can while I try to beat the crap out of you butt naked with this two-handed weapon. And you just see what the results are. You can take Rebuke, you can take everything else out, you can do the full rotation that you're used to doing, right? So you can pretend to catch him in a grenade, you can run over there, you can just do the rotation that we talked about here, and just see if you have enough DPS butt naked with a two-handed weapon. That will tell you very clearly just how much of your gear needs to be invested into DPS increases and how much of that gear can be dedicated purely to your survivability. Okay? That's what that's going to tell you. It's going to tell you where your DPS breakpoint is pretty goddamn quickly. So let's say you do the test and it comes back that you need about 10% more damage you're missing on your Paladin. Okay, what that's going to tell you is about half of your gear is going to need to be DPS gear, and the other half of your gear can be just, there's no point to it being DPS gear. You're already DPS capped. It can be purely defensive in nature. Okay? This is why I was saying at the beginning that probably your best PvP gear in Season of Discovery is going to be Tier 1. Why? Because Tier 1, let's go, no, it's Law. Yeah, I got to make sure that we're still recording here. Okay, Law. Lawbringer. We don't want that. Lawbringer. Lawbringer. Lawbringer, and Lawbringer. Okay, cool. Let's not go Lawbringer. Let's go, we'll just do a Tier 1 build, like a fresh Molten Core thing going on here. Actually, I know what you want. You want the Ani neck piece. God damn, what the fuck is with my caps lock? Ani. Ani neck piece. There we go. Onyxia Tooth Pendant. We want a Dragon's Blood Cape. Yes, we do. We want a Dark Iron Ring. Heavy Dark Iron Ring. And then the last thing I think we want is a Myrmidon's Seal. But I can't really spell Myrmidon's Seal very well, so we're just going to scroll down a little bit. I think it's like an M-Y. Yeah, there we go. Thank God. I was like remembering how to spell it. And we're missing enchants, so we can throw the enchants on here really quickly. 9 stamina. You put on... you actually don't want health in this build, believe it or not. You actually want the spell power, the fire resist. I'm not joking. I wish I was joking, but I'm not. La 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 la, you want the fire resistance. Give me fire resist of 20. Give me fire resist of 20. Thank you very much. And give me a hand of rag. Fuck, I can't put on a hand of rag. Oh my god, see, it just bugged out there all of a sudden. So now I can't click it anymore. And if I try to click the chest piece, it won't work anymore. And this is just my life. I wish I could show you what it looks like, but basically you have like between 5,100 and 4,800 HP with a hand of rag. Just chilling in Lawbringer suit. You can see our spell power is non-existent in Lawbringer suit. We have no spell power whatsoever. But we have about 138 plus healing, and that's actually pretty good. The suit has a shit ton of stamina on it. Its fire resist is absolutely fucking insane. If you put on... if you gear her up properly and you put on a hand of rag, she ends up having like 200 fire resist. It's with like 480 HP. That's like, what the fuck? At that point, like, Jesus Christ, like, what? Your DPS is perfectly viable butt naked. She has really good attack power. Attack rating. We don't need attack rating. We need attack power. She has really good attack power. This is being buffed up by Might of Minithil quite a bit here. But she ends up having like 600 attack power, very similar to the Tier 2 set. She has an absolutely insane amount of spirit. Holy fuck. She has like 100 spirit on the gear. If you know the value of that, that's like a shit ton of MP5. Especially in PvP fights where you actually need mana, meaning you're spending a lot of time in being like, ice cubed or stuck in a sheep and stuff like that. Absolutely an amazing set. If Tier 1 gets scaled up to Tier 3 and it's still the way she is, I'd be perfectly happy. I'd consider her the best. She's literally your best Paladin PvP gear in Season of Discovery. And the reason for that is because we probably have enough DPS already just being butt naked. So if you look at her, she has everything we want. She has strength, she has stamina, she has intellect. This is a terrible example of a piece of gear. Strength. I guess that's just a lot of strength for this level. Like, what the balls? Yeah, okay. We'll just look at this belt here for a second. It has strength, it has stamina, it has intellect, and then it has plus healing. This is perfect gear. Why? Because you're taking Sheath of Light. We prefer to have Sheath of... we're not taking Exorcism. We're taking Rebuke, or we're taking Avengers Shield. So we don't really care about spell power. She has plus healing, and Sacred Shield scales way harder with plus healing than anything else. You lose a little bit of damage in your Judgment. You lose damage in your Seal of Command, but it's probably not as much. You probably have more than enough damage already. She's just absolutely amazing. Her big brother, of course, is Tier 2, so if what I'm saying about the healing stuff is wrong, then Tier 2's got your back. Tier 2 basically has identical sets to stats to Tier 1, except it switches out along with the spell power. She easily has a 200 fire resist with a Hand of Rag. The primary difference with her is that she just has spell power rather than plus healing. So it really depends. Also, Tier 1 has a shit ton of Shadow Resist as a side note, which is also interesting. Okay, cool. But this is just Molten Core gear, right? The only thing weird here is Might of Minithil, which I can't switch out. Just switch that out with a Hand of Rag and continue filling out the enchantments, and you're pretty much good to go. Absolutely amazing gear for Season of Discovery. But again, I cannot stress enough in your Paladin gearing in Season of Discovery how little... okay, you need to increase your DPS. You almost need no DPS increase from your gear whatsoever to get the job done. You need almost no increase in gear whatsoever from your runes to get the job done, right? Crusader Strike and Divine Storm are perfectly fine. If you're a Reckoning Paladin, you don't even need Crusader Strike. You take the Reckoning Rune instead, because you just get more damage out of it, and Sacred Shield starts going Super Saiyan when you're below 35% life. The hot on it starts absolutely not fucking around. The problem, however, here is this. Your hybrid gear is still your best gear. It's like, it doesn't change anything. It's why? Because there is no Tier 1 gear. So if I had Tier 1 gear scaled up to Tier 2 gear, it would be Tier 3 gear. It would be your best PvP gear for a Reckoning Paladin and probably a Deep Ret Paladin in the entire game. But since that doesn't exist, we have to compare it to Tier 3. Tier 3 has no strength on it whatsoever. It has no critical strike on it whatsoever. So you just end up having your base, a butt-naked Paladin, basically has 400 attack power. I know it sounds stupid, but they do. So you don't really gain much from that. She also doesn't have a lot of spell power on her, but she's got decent plus healing. But she has no strength on her, so Sheath of Light does nothing. Right, so she's not your ideal PvP gear. Your ideal PvP gear is the Tier 1 suit, which has strength on it, which would, if this had strength on it like Tier 1 did, it would, and plus healing gear like Tier 1 does, which a Tier 3 traditionally has been thought of as an upgraded version of Tier 1. This number would all of a sudden spike to well over 700. You can easily see that with the gear here. Yeah, this number would spike over to 700, it'd be like 750 plus healing, and Sheath of Light absolutely is not fucking around with that much healing anymore. You'd end up having an additional 200 spell power. She's already at 141 spell power, so she'd be like 340 spell power, 750 plus healing. Absolutely insanely good, well-optimized gear for Season of Discovery. There is some pieces of gear that exist out there that follow this dynamic. The one that comes to mind, I can actually pick that up. That's nice. I just can't mess with I can't change the weapons out, and I can't change the chest piece out. But there are other pieces that I can still mess out. Specifically, I do believe it's the gauntlets of Redeemed Prophecy. Yeah. So in the hybrid gear suit, gloves are really fascinating because you have multiple glove options in the hybrid suit, and one of them just happens to be perfectly optimized gear for Season of Discovery. Strength, stamina, intellect, increase healing by 37, and this is 75 item level. It's competition. We have to go up here a little bit, or I'll just swap that out real fast. We'll go with the Redeemed Prophecy so we can see the comparison. It's competition. Are we still recording? Thank God. Its competition are Righteous Champion gloves. Come on, scroll down. Stop it. Stop being stupid. Scroll down. Stop being stupid. Thank God. Okay. Its competition is something like this, right? A little bit more strength, a little bit less stamina, significantly less intellect, a bit more spirit, but you can see now this has damage and healing and critical strike. Okay, well, that's interesting. Then also you have the Gauntlets of Kalmandor, which are sitting up here doing basically the exact same thing. Like, a bit less strength now, even less stamina, but you get, like, more spell power. Like, what the hell is... Yeah, you gain, like, 4 spell power, but you lose, like, strength and stuff. And, of course, you have got Gloves of Redeemed Prophecy sitting over here. So there's just this weird element in hybrid Paladin gearing where gloves give you lots of options. But from a Season of Discovery perspective... odds are your Redeemed Prophecy gloves are your best Paladin gloves. If for some reason you need more damage, then the Gauntlets of Kalmandor are probably better. But this thing has more stamina. She's coming with a decent amount of strength on her, and she's coming into the party as a plate mail gear with spell power. Yeah, the Gauntlets of Kalmandor are also mail. That's something important to note. Whereas the Righteous Gauntlets of the Champion are plate, right? So if that matters to you, then that matters to you. But you can get away with some mail gear here and there in your Paladin builds. I'd also note that this item level is 78 when the Redeemed Prophecy one is 75. So if it got pumped up to a 78 item level, it would be even better. Just to give you an idea of what well-optimized Paladin gearing looks like in Season of Discovery. So again, can't stress it enough. The first thing you should test in Season of Discovery is, what does your DPS look like against enemy healer classes and enemy classes in general? Feel free to test it in duelings, butt naked, with just a really good two-handed weapon, okay? From there, you'll be able to determine how much additional damage you actually need. A very rough estimate on gearing is that every piece of gear is worth a 2% increase in DPS. It's probably worth closer to like a 2.1% increase in DPS or a 2.2% increase in DPS. But just estimate that's a 2% DPS increase in DPS. Very quickly, you'll be able to see, do I need more damage? Do I not need more damage? And then you can adjust your gearing accordingly from there. Savix does not do this. And because Savix does not do this, he starts blathering away about how quickly it is for him to blow up in PvP. And I'll go make a separate video because this one is way too long and this is going to super trigger me. But this is also the core mistake that he gets in his Reckoning build. And I'll spoil it for you right now. I said I would watch it real fast and let you see if you could find it. But I'll spoil it for you right now. He is missing on his Reckoning build, because I've tested this with Reckoning. This is your BIS Reckoning gear in Season of Discovery, right here. This is your BIS Reckoning build. You actually do have heal and combat capability. You have 4 points in Reckoning. Because you have 3 points in improved concentration aura, and you come down here and you pick up 2 points in spiritual focus. This gives you 50% pushback immunity. This gives you a 28%. So in conjunction, these two give you a 78% pushback immunity, which is more than enough for you to be able to heal yourself in combat. I've tested the Reckoning build butt naked. And discovered that you have more than enough damage in a Wreck Bomb butt naked with a two-handed weapon so that you do not need to gear for any additional damage whatsoever at level 40 in Season of Discovery. And likely going forward into the future, you also don't have to gear, so you can gear as defensively as you possibly can if you so choose. And it's highly recommended that you do. And this is with Seal of Martyrdom Wreck Bombs, of course. And then since you don't need any additional DPS, you just don't take any additional DPS. So, for example, you start taking a Hand of Reckoning because it increases your HP pool. You take Sheath of Light, or you take Enlightened Judgments for increasing your HP pool. From Sacred Shield. You definitely take Sacred Shield because you don't need Art of War. You don't need any damn damage. Exorcism is here just because there isn't anything all that much better. In retrospect, you should take Avengers Shield instead, or Inspiration Exemplar. Basically, you have a free rune slot here in the Reckoning build. Avengers Shield probably is BIS, however. And the way you use it is you open on the enemy with Avengers Shield. You start closing on them. There's a really good chance that this freaks them out, and they'll PvP trinket that away. and then you've already swapped into your two-hander after Avenger shielding them. You use Avenger shield basically to get out PvP trinket, and then once that happens, you go into self-healing mode. And basically, you just heal yourself until you have a full wreck bomb, and then you go over there and you introduce them to Jesus. Like, literally, that's how this works, right? You give them the good news. That is actually a Mormon joke. That's a Jesus joke, if you didn't know. You give them the good news, and they'll just die instantaneously. And subsequently, your gearing alters completely, where you start greatly valuing plus healing and spell power. So you have some weird pieces in here, like the neck piece off of White Mane that gives you plus healing. You want a nice thick mana bar so you can heal yourself. You're basically a Holy Reckoning Paladin, and you play accordingly. You take Shock Forged leg plates and greaves. You take the Hazard chest piece because the Shock Forge is absolutely terrible, and this is just the best chest piece you can get otherwise. Cragfish Gauntlets of the Eagle may or may not be swapped out for ones of strength, stamina. But you can pick up some of the Eagle. You have of the Eagle bracers. This is the best that I could find. You just want a nice, thick boy mana bar so you can heal yourself for long periods of time. And keep... and, of course, you want maximum health. The TLDR on this build is that... And I'll go make the separate video. Is that when you watch the Savix video, he's going to say... Let's just watch it together real fast here. I can do that real quick. This video is already long enough. Let's just do it real fast. It's gonna fucking trigger me. It's good. Oh my. Oh. So I'm just gonna make that point. I'm end the video. I'm gonna immediately go into another one because I'm gonna get fucking triggered. Oh my god.
We're gonna go.
The TLDR here is that he's missing 40% of his HP. He's missing 40% of it. All right, 40 fucking percent of his HP he's missing. So he's playing a Reckoning Paladin in DPS gear when he doesn't need to be in DPS gear, and he's missing 40% of his HP. That if he was a properly geared Reckoning Paladin, and then he's about to tell me how hard it is to close on ranged classes with minus 40 hit points. To put this in perspective, and I thought about this, right? To put this in perspective, that's like making a PvP guide for Paladin, era Nax geared Paladin. Control Z, Control Z. And rather than having 6,000 fucking hit points on your Reckoning Paladin, you have like 4,200 hit points. And you're complaining to me that you're getting blown up by elemental shamans and other ranged classes. Like, oh, you just don't have enough HP because they blow you the fuck up. Blah, blah, blah. It's like, bro, in Tier 1 Molten Core gear, you should have over 5,000 hit points. And you're trying to PvP as a Reckoning Paladin in Nax gear with 4,200 hit points. I want you to try to understand the scale, the magnitude of this fuck up. Like I said, I was going to get triggered. Now, us Paladins often argue the virtues between these two gear sets, the Hybrid gear set and the Avengers gear set, where you basically lose like 200 HP. This is like a 3% HP loss. And we'll, me and Drakova and other Paladins will go back and forth as to which of these two gearings is better and why. It's like, well, one gains a lot of plus spell power, and the other one's like, you know, minus 1% critical strike, but you lose 200 HP. Back and forth between us. We'll argue over 3%, a 3% HP loss. A 40 fucking HP on a Reckoning? What the whole? This is the dumbest fucking thing I've ever seen in a PvP guide ever. Wow. It's going to trigger me. So let's just watch it together, and let's get triggered.
With the Reckoning build, I'll demonstrate some damage here so you guys can get the idea of what this is all about.
Keep it together. Keep it together. Oh, yeah, and he survives this, and he does it wrong. It's actually kind of funny. Oh, no, this is the one he does wrong. Yeah. So he stuns the target and takes the time to walk behind it, even though the sheer act of stunning the target means that they can't dodge and parry you anyways, so there's no point in walking behind the target and wreck bombing. There's no point to doing this. You just stun the target. If the stun is successful, you just put... He wasted 1.5 seconds of DPS here, which is absolutely unacceptable for a Reckoning Paladin whatsoever. Because if you're using like a 3.5 speed weapon, you can easily, it becomes very easy for you to get an extra auto attack in if you're doing it correctly. And he's wasting 0.5 seconds of doing it correctly. So he's denying himself an extra auto attack just in case he needs it. Like, oh, okay. All right. That was terrible.
It is very strong, and I think if you're trying to make a montage or 1v1ing a melee class, it's very, very powerful. Yet, like I said at the start, if you're fighting against a kite class that are good, it's gonna be hard.
Really?
All right, here we go, chat.
All right, let's look at his HP. His HP is 2,000. You can't see it. He's just taking 200 damage. He's taken 2,300. He has 2,367 HP. This is with the stamina buff, but I like this clip because the damage. This is literally how much HP he would have outside of the battleground. Now you can see he's got dots on him of a bunch of stuff. He has no sacred shield. He's not in a resistance aura. He's getting dotted up by like at least 2 warlocks out here. He just got done saying that you're going to struggle as a Reckoning Paladin versus range class, and he's going to show him a clip of him getting deleted out of existence. But when you do the math, he's missing sacred shield. He's missing sacred shield with spell power behind it. He's missing Reckoning, which will increase your HP pool by at least 10%. It's basically Kings when you take Reckoning. He has Kings on him in this clip that we're about to watch, but he doesn't have it on him personally. He has it on him from a Hunter buff. And so he's at 2,003, almost 2,400 HP with nothing but a King's buff. Like, what? Okay, so, but he said takes Kings, so I guess that makes sense. I want to try to see his gear here real fast, but he doesn't show it, so I can't see his gear. So I don't know what his HP pool is. Ugh. But, oh, geez, it's so stupid. Right, so he's probably running around like 2,300 HP base. When he Kings himself, he goes up to like 2,500, and that's it. That's all he's got going on. He's got 2,500 fucking HP on this fucking Reckoning Paladin. What the fuck are you doing? Meanwhile, this Paladin over here, let's go check him out. Thank you very much. This Paladin over here almost has 2,700 HP. That's unbuffed, right? That's without buffing himself. By the time you're done doing all the extra crap that you have going on, because all Kings is going to do is it doesn't actually increase it by 10%. It increases it by this number down here. So Kings is going to give us an extra 220 HP with this current build. I was being too generous with Savix HP. I was assuming he went up at like 220 HP from Kings as well, but he wouldn't. He'd only go up 200 at most. So it's not even 2,500 HP. He probably has 2,450 HP. Fuck my life. All right, but this one is effective HP. It starts out at 2,700. Then you have to add Kings into the equation, which is going to be another 220. This is for avoiding burst damage, right? You're definitely going to be using Kings. Then I have to multiply this by 1.1 because that's what taking the Reckoning Rune does for us. It increases our effective HP from getting blown up out of existence by another a 10%. Cool. Then we have to take the HP the BG HP buff into the equation, but we're not going to do that quite yet because in this clip he doesn't do it, right? So okay, that's fine. So no multiply by another 30% here. All right, cool. We'll just go equals. Yeah, okay, cool. So it's like 3,200 HP is what we're at right now. Pretty easy, 3,200, 3,220. I buffed it up by like 9 HP here just for the sake of my sanity. Yeah. So I'm just going to do it over again. Jesus. 270, 0 plus 220 equals times 1.1 equals, cool. 2,312 damage. Okay, or HP, cool. And then, of course, we have Sacred Shield at this level is doing God knows what. I think she's kicking around in this gear with this 127 plus healing and Sheath of Light, which may or may not be active, right? She's kicking around at about an additional plus 200 HP. So this Paladin will have 3,200 HP, and Savix's Paladin has as this at most, basically. We'll be generous. We'll give him the extra 50, but I don't think he has it. Okay, that's his HP pool. Now we're about to watch him. Okay, let's go over here. Show us the clip. Okay, we're about to watch our boy here charge off with 2,350, 51 HP. Let's see how long he survives. Okay, dead. Yeah, what the fuck do you think? Yeah, what are we doing here? Right? Homie, bruh. You don't need all that extra damage. This is you. This is me. This is you. This is me. Me, you, me. You, me. Me, you. Me, you, me, you, me. All right, let's just figure out what the durability difference is here. Multiply that by... No. We need to take... We take this and we divide it by that. Okay. 4, 1, 2 equals. I don't think he has it. Yeah. So he's missing almost 30% HP here. Okay? Not the 40% that I'm telling you, but I haven't factored in other factors. So, for example, with this 2,400, if you take into account the whole battleground thing, right? This is him in battlegrounds. He still has less HP in a battleground than I do outside of a battleground. And then with me, I have to minus the 200. It's about 220, but we'll minus 200 from this. And then multiply that by 1.3. Oh, look, we got up quite a bit. And then I add 200 for Sacred Shield. So what ends up happening here is you end up having to add Sacred Shield twice, because at this HP level, you're sure as fuck going to survive at least 6 seconds against the enemy. In enemy, yeah, you're going to survive an extra 6 seconds, which means you double dip from Sacred Shield. So we have to add another 200 from Sacred Shield. There's also a really good chance that you have HOTS rolling, and Jesus Christ, things start getting really scary. So now I have to take this number and I have to divide it by 4,750 equals. And very quickly you can see we're starting to get up closer to him missing damn near 40% spell power ratio, or 40% HP. The reason why I'm saying 40% HP is because one of these paladins has enough durability to be able to get the HOTS rolling on Sacred Shield, and the other one doesn't. And that's kind of a big fucking deal. And once you factor in the HOTS on Sacred Shield, we're talking between a 40% and a 50% HP difference between our boy here and what you should be doing as a Reckoning Paladin. This is the dumbest thing I have ever seen in a Paladin PvP guide ever. It literally drives me insane. Yeah.
And it's a little bit...
Let's watch that again. No, shut the fuck up. Let's watch that again. No, shut the fuck up. Oh my god. Trigger me again. Do it again.
It's very strong, and I think if you're trying to make a montage or 1v1ing a melee class, it's very, very powerful. Yet, like I said at the start, if you're fighting against the kite class that are good, it's gonna be hard.
Really?
Alright, here we go, chat.
Did you take Exorcism? Or did you take Avengers Shield? You don't have Sacred Shield. You have Sheath of Light active. Okay, good boy. Got that somehow. Been in combat a little bit. And blow. Yeah, okay, that's cute. That's normal. Okay, when in the history of Reckoning Paladins have we not been sitting in maximum durability gear? It's like, imagine why I believe this is the dumbest thing I've ever heard in a PvP guide ever. Let's make sure we're still recording. As I thought about this, and the reason why this is the dumbest thing I've ever heard is because I don't understand, like, how many years ago Reckoning Paladins have never, in the history of Reckoning Paladin, to my knowledge, ever thought it was a good idea to run around in high DPS, low stamina gear and PvP. This has never been a thing. Okay? It's not a thing, and it's never been a thing. This is just something you don't do as a Reckoning Paladin. Yet I'm watching Savix make a PvP guide video doing this. What? Like, bruh. So, the benefit of the doubt here would be, okay, it's Season of Discovery, you know, he didn't do the math. There's a lot of math here involved, Pallytime, you know, he doesn't know that Sacred Shield is a spell power ratio behind it. Maybe it's some hidden jutsu knowledge that you could be a butt-naked Reckoning Paladin and still kill people, so you don't need all this extra DPS. Maybe you don't need Crusader Strike, you don't need Exorcism, so you can take other things instead to increase your durability. Like, maybe I can give him the benefit of the doubt on that. But at the end of the day, it's like, no, you're a fucking Reckoning Paladin. You need to gear as durability. You need to get as much durability as you can possibly get away with. Like, that's just... So this is... I'm watching Savix go full retard here with the PvP guide, and it blows my fucking mind. So at this point, I'm taking away your PvP Paladin guide card. Hand it the fuck over. No. I'll let you make guides on Deep Ret, even though they're pretty basic bitch and terrible. But your Reckoning card, fucking hand it over. That was fucking awful. Holy shit, is this bad? And then it's gonna get even worse, because he's gonna show you the talent tree and he's gonna fuck it up.
And it's a little bit early to be playing this.
Shut up.
It gets better as you get higher level.
Shut the
'cause
fuck
you can,
up.
Mix a little bit of Retribution.
No.
And the Reckoning, right? So to begin with, we're gonna go with Devotion Aura. We're not gonna be able to go deep into Sanctity.
This is wrong, because you're almost never going to be in Devotion Aura, because you're going to be in Concentration Aura instead, so you can heal yourself. When you're not in Concentration Aura, you're going to be in a Resistance Aura. We just watched Savix get blown the fuck up by Shadow Priests with a bunch of Shadow Priest dots on him. Your Shadow Resist Aura is up to date at level 40 at 45. It's worth like a 16% magic damage reduction. The fact that he wasn't in it in that clip is clinically retarded, especially since he doesn't have improved Sanctity Aura. He's going to avoid it. And then if you look up matchups, right, there are matchups where you want to be Sword and Board and you want to have Redoubt. There's almost no matchup where you want to have Armor Aura specifically over a shield. So, for example, let's say you're fighting a rogue, right? Okay, you're fighting a rogue. As a Reckoning Paladin, the way that'll play out is you sit in two-hander at first with your Armor Aura or your Concentration Aura on. You wait, and ideally you'll use a two-hander and your Armor Aura at first. Then once you get a full Wreck Bomb, you will stun the rogue and you'll try to kill them. The only way that fails to kill the rogue, mathematically speaking, the only way you fail to kill the rogue at that point is if they resist your stun. If they resist your stun, you are then forced to swing your Wreck Bomb into them anyways. There's a really good chance that they have evasion. A top tier rogue will have evasion up just in case they resist your stun, right? And that's because that's the only way they survive the Wreck Bomb. If they survive the Wreck Bomb because they resisted your stun, your only viable play as a Reckoning Paladin is to immediately go Sword and Board with Redoubt. You can't fuck around with it. You have to get into a shield immediately. And what's worse is you don't even want Armor Aura. You want to get into your Redoubt Aura immediately, and you want to start trying to Flash of Light yourself. In Season of Discovery, you're doing it because you have Sacred Shield. But in traditional classic World of Warcraft, you're doing it because the vast majority of energy of damage from a rogue comes from their energy usage, and it actually costs a rogue 10 energy to kick you, which means whether they kick you or forcing them to kick you. Basically, you get the heal off one way or the other. Either they don't kick you, you get the heal off because they didn't have enough energy at the time, or they spend the 10 energy to kick you, to kick your Flash of Light heal. You lose no DPS whatsoever. You lose almost nothing whatsoever from going for the Flash of Light, and you healed yourself in a roundabout way from forcing them to lose energy from kicking you. Oh. What else is there? Right, and if you have improved concentration aura, the reason why you're not in armor aura is because you have improved concentration aura. When you're in improved concentration aura under those circumstances, there's a 15% chance that their kick whiffs. And that's kind of the holy grail for you as a paladin under these very dire PvP circumstances, is that you go for the flash of light, they spend the energy to kick you, it gets completely resisted thanks to concentration aura, the flash of light goes through anyway. That is a nightmare scenario for any rogue, and it's one of your win conditions under these extremely dire circumstances. If you did not have Redoubt, you're fucking dead. Okay, you're fucking dead. Redoubt does so much for you against a rogue, it's not even funny. The other class where you're going sword and board against is warriors, right? If you're not doing sword and board against warriors, you're doing it wrong. And if you're not Redoubt, you're also doing it wrong. Redoubt just does more for you. The other class that comes to mind where you might want to be an armor aura is hunters. But the way you deal with hunters is usually you either open with a shield, because Redoubt does work on all their ranged attacks and on all their pet attacks, and you beat the crap out of their pet until their pet takes enough damage that it's either killed or forced to be withdrawn back to the hunter. It's no longer a viable thing in combat. And sword and board versus hunters in Season of Discovery with Sheath of Light and Redoubt is it's not just perfectly viable, it's borderline BIS. But traditionally, you'll beat up the pet until the pet's no longer a problem, and only then do you go and do a two-hander and you go after the hunter. You can also do it in reverse, where you start with the two-hander, you delete the pet out of existence with a wreck bomb, and then you immediately go into a shield and you start healing yourself. Under those conditions, once again, Redoubt is going to do more for you. There is no melee class in the entire fucking game where it is a bad idea to have sword and board with Redoubt against. They do not exist. Dual-wielding melee hunters, fuck yeah, sword and board. Dual-wielding shamans, fuck yeah, sword and board. But you want Redoubt, you want Redoubt, you want Redoubt. So it's clinically, it's borderline stupid. It's not even stupid. It's straight up stupid that you're taking armor aura over Redoubt as a Reckoning Paladin. Bad idea. Holy shit.
It's going to be precision.
Everything else is fine.
Hit cap,
okay, so I'm just going to speed this up. Everything else is fine.
He gets hammer. A 6-second stun.
Yeah, everything else is fine except he completely doesn't put any points in improved concentration aura.
Remaining not that bad, so we're gonna go with also going to be beneficial.
Right. So look at this shit for a second. So this is his full PvP build. Okay, look at this. Okay, homie didn't put any points in improved concentration aura, yet he puts 5 points into the holy tree. He's right. And he puts 1 point in improved seal of justice. What? Improved Seal of Justice does nothing for you. You're better off taking Sanctity Aura. Blessing a Sanctuary. Why? Because you use Kings initially to survive the burst, but very quickly you have to freedom yourself. And once you freedom yourself, there's not much point into putting Kings back on yourself again until you heal to full. So that means you're either going to might yourself or you're going to light yourself to make your... I forgot to mention this. The reason why you're using Blessing of Light on Rep Paladins and on all Paladins basically is because it increases Flash of Light healing significantly. We're talking like 200, 300, 400 spell power worth of increase the effectiveness of Flash of Light. You're taking Sacred Shield, and those HOTS are absolutely not fucking around. So that's why you're taking Blessing of Light. So once Kings has been traded for Freedom, once you've closed the distance on the Freedom, Kings did its job. It's anti-burst only. You're either you're putting up a Blessing of Sanctuary or you're putting up a Blessing of Light, right? One of those two auras is coming out of you. If for some reason you're about to wreck bomb the target and you have the ability to put up Might, then by all means put up Might. But he puts 1 point in improved Seal of Righteousness, not realizing it does absolutely nothing to increase your DPS whatsoever. Does not affect the spell power of Seal of Righteousness at all. It only increases the base damage. So when you're level 60 with a max rank Seal of Light, if you put 5 points in improved Seal of Justice and you were level 60, you've increased your DPS from Seal of Justice by you had 1,000,000 spell power. you'd increase the DPS of your Seal of Justice by 2. Got 5 talent points to increase the Seal of Justice damage by 2, even if you had 1,000,000 spell power at level 60. Completely useless talent point. Take Blessing of Sanctuary instead. Blessing of Sanctuary, she acts like Blessing of Kings when you've had to freedom yourself. So if she's basically like Blessing of Kings light. And then, of course, if you're fighting any of those rogues or hunters or anything else that does a lot of attacks against you, Blessing of Sanctuary is worth its weight in gold. So this is a completely wasted talent point, and it's dumber because he didn't put any talent points into improved Blessing of Sanctuary. Instead, he put 1 point into Toughness and 1 point into Anticipation. And he's right there for Spiritual Focus. You're right there, bro. What the fuck are you doing? So he's made the mistake of thinking that he needs all this DPS gear when he doesn't need it. And now he's making in the mistake of not being a Holy Reckoning build at level 40 when you have the ability to be a Holy Reckoning build at level 40. What the fuck are we doing? I'm taking away your Ret Paladin guide card. Give it back. Ultimate Retribution Paladin guide, perhaps. Reckoning card, give it back. Holy shit, that triggers me. And then from here on out, he doesn't say anything that's even remotely important. Watch his runes.
Huge. For hands, we're going to go with Crusader Strike.
Ah! It hurts my
Sheet
soul.
Of Light, Exorcism.
Sheet of Light is fine.
And
Ah!
level 4.
Ah! Oh! Why? Why? Okay, look
this
look at the
shield.
runes.
This
No,
might
come back.
also
Stop.
go into
No, stop.
Avengers Shield.
Okay, thank God. Yes. Okay, better.
And Sacred Shield.
Thank you. Thank you. But this is better. I approve of this. But where's the Hand of Reckoning? You don't need Crusader Strike. Where's the Hand of Reckoning? You don't need Crusader Strike. You don't need Crusader Strike. You don't need it. You don't even technically need Sheath of Light on the Reckoning Paladin. You're far better off taking the Improved Judgment things. Why? Because you can start bitch slapping enemy spellcasters and making their spells take 1 second longer to cast. That might not sound like much, but you can make Sheeps be a 2.5 second cast. You can use Exorcism. This is why I had Exorcism on the thing originally. I'm starting to remember this now. Let's go to the build. Let's go to the talents. Let's swap out Avengers Shield for Exorcism, and then you swap out Sheath of Light for Enlightened Judgments. So this is the other probably really terrifying Reckoning build. You're taking Exorcism because it gives you another ranged ability to cause spell pushback against enemies. And you're taking Lasting Judgments to also have another ranged ability to cause spell pushback against enemies. When we touch people, they die, so Sheath of Light is borderline useless to us. We're designed to heal in combat as opposed to fight in combat. So, again, Sheath of Light is useless to us. Avengers Shield also can definitely be it's just as well as Exorcism in the grand scheme of things, because she will also cause spell pushback. The problem is that we can't do that while also charging up a Wreck Bomb, which may or may not be a good thing. So if you were fighting a mage, for example, this is your ideal rune setup right here. You're fighting a shaman, this is also your ideal rune setup here, believe it or not. Why is this? Well, we'll start with shaman, right? You can judge the shaman at range and immediately kill their grounding totem. And then when they're charging up a whatever spell cast, so that would be a Chain Lightning to do the wombo combo on you, or they're doing a Lava Burst or something, you can blast them with Exorcism, and it'll cause spell pushback for an extra second. If you know the matchup, you'll know that they cannot afford a second of spell pushback up on the matchup, and they cannot afford their grounding totem being removed so easily. And so this combination basically trivializes the matchup, and they're going to have to find a way to counter it. I'm waiting for them to find a way to counter it. Currently, they can't counter it because before they can get off their wombo combo on you, you're basically within Hodge range, and they don't have any grounding totem anymore. And then so you just Hodge stun them, and you just beat the crap out of them. Basically, you just kill them, or super, super bad. It also lets you damage them at range. So you start peppering them with Exorcism and Judgments, and there's nothing they can do about it. So it forces them to get way too close to you than they want to. So for example, you're making their lava burst now is now a 3-second cast as opposed to a 2-second cast, and that's with either one of these ability usages, right? And there's nothing they can do about that. So when they're trying to sit at 36 yards range and blast you with lightning bolts and blast you with lava bursts, it's very easy for you to just make it take a second longer to cast, and then you just back the fuck up. Well, what are they going to do? Are they going to... they're taking damage, but they're not doing anything to you. So you can farm critical strike charges, and at any moment you can just blast them and just back the fuck up, and then start healing yourself. And it's really oppressive for them, because you can damage them at range and cause their spells to take a second longer to cast, but they can't damage you at range in return. And so basically you're just farming Reckoning charges until it's time to move in, and their wombo combo is denied them because you still have the ability to do the spell pushback. Mage also comes to mind here because it makes Mage... you need both of them. You can't do one or the other. So a Frost Mage, for example, can put up their only spell pushback immunity is that they can put up an 800 HP bubble shield as a Frost Mage, right? Well, if you Exorcism them, your Exorcism's going to do about 700 damage, give or take. It's not enough to punch through the shield and cause spell pushback, but the Enlightened Judgment with Seal of Martyrdom she does about 400 damage, depending upon your gear. Like butt naked, it'll do like 350 damage. That's more than enough damage to punch through that 800 damage shield and cause spell pushback on that sheep cast, which means sheep cast now costs them is now a 2.5 second cast rather than a 1.5 second cast. You can cover in 2.5 seconds about 27 yards. In that amount of time, you can cover about 22 yards, and then melee range is 5 yards. So you can cover about 27 yards worth of range and delete somebody out of existence with a wreck bomb. What this basically means is that the only safe distance to cast a sheep on you now is between 30 yards and like 27 yard range. It's like a 3-yard window where they can cast sheep on you, which means you can blast them with spells, do damage to them, and just literally backpedal your paladin and stop, and you're out of range of sheep. So it means they have to push closer to you in order to get the sheep off, but if they come any closer to you, the sheep is going to take so long to cast that you can cover that distance and delete them out of existence. It's super oppressive to have both of these abilities as a Reckoning Paladin specifically against a number of ranged classes, because you're making their spells take a second longer to cast, and against casters who don't have bubbles or grounding totems, for example. So warlocks come to mind. You can always double up on them, right? So you're making spells cost 1.5 seconds longer to cast. It's super powerful, super oppressive for Reckoning Paladin specifically. It's not so good for a deep ret Paladin because that mage doesn't give a fuck, right? This is another reason why I'm a big fan of taking Rebuke. So the only way to make that mage give a fuck when he's casting sheep on you, because you blasted him with Enlightened Judgments and you blasted him with Exorcism and you caused the spell pushback, the only way to make that mage give a fuck is if by the time you get over to him, you can rebuke him, right? Like that's the only way to do it. But if you took Rebuke, you didn't take Exorcism, and now you have a problem. And so, yeah, I just said something stupid, right? If I take Rebuke, I don't have Exorcism, so that doesn't even work. And then, how do I put this? So let's say this is you as a Rep Paladin, right? You punch through their shield. You made it into melee contact with them. They're like 0.2 seconds away from sheeping you, and down comes your auto attack. You're not a Reckoning Paladin, so what did you do exactly? You like auto attack them and Crusader strike them, and you judge damage into them. They're not going to give a fuck. That mage does not care. He's going to be like a Half-Life mage going ow and just run away while you're in sheep. He literally gives no fucks. Whereas a Reckoning Paladin just said to that mage, Ice Blocker, die. Yeah, so this combo, absolutely amazing on a Reckoning Paladin. Not super amazing on a Deep Ret Paladin. You play completely differently. Avengers Shield doesn't work all that well with Enlightened Judgments because you can't have a Wreck Bomb and cause the Avengers Shield effect, if that makes any sense. So you can't use Avengers Shield with the Wreck Bomb. So you can't. It won't work against mages. So you're basically forced to take Exorcism. And yeah, some good hidden jutsu there. All right, cool. All right, so his runes are terrible. Sheath of Light is useless. Crusader Strike is useless. Avengers Shield is useless because Sheath of Light is useless. In theory, Avengers Shield's not the worst thing to take in the world because, again, you can Avengers Shield the target, and then you can start rolling up on them as a Sheath of Light Paladin. This will force them to PvP trinket the Avengers Shield. And then you, from that point on, you can very easily catch them with a grenade, and then give them the good news. So Avengers Shield's not the worst thing in the world against a lot of classes, but it's not as good as Exorcism on a Reckoning Paladin, believe it or not. I prefer to take Sheath of Light. I'm still trying to find a way to make Sheath of Light work on the Reckoning Paladin. You can definitely make it work with Avengers Shield. This is another reason why I don't mind Avengers Shield on it all that much. So, for example, let's say I Avengers Shield the target. They PvP trinket the Avengers Shield. I have Sheath of Light. I want it activated, so I grenade the target. I run up to them, and I start giving them the business. This will force them to use a grenade to get me off of them. But I have Sheath of Light active, and I'm just going to go into my heal myself for days routine until I have a full rec charge. And then from that point forward, because you swap to a two-hander, so now you're farming rec charges while you're healing yourself with Sheath of Light. You're perfectly happy to do this. You have a Reckoning rather than Crusader Strike, so you're super, super tanky, especially with the HOTS rolling on you. What is it? And then, in theory, I'll catch you again, because you don't have PvP Trinket, I can catch you and delete you out of existence with Goblin Mortar or Gnomish Nomadic. Right? Those are your go-to trinkets for Paladin. So if I'm using Sheath of Light on a Reckoning Paladin, I'm definitely using Avengers Shield over Exorcism. But you could also argue that I caught you... it works the other way around. Like I catch you with Gnomish Nomadic, and... or I grenade stun you, and then you PvP trinket out of that, and then I catch you with Gnomish Nomadic, and then I activate Sheath of Light. This is if I have Exorcism. I'm not using Avengers Shield. And then I just do the normal routine with Exorcism. No, it doesn't work because you don't have Lasting Judgment. Fuck. Right, so all else fails, the Lasting Judgment build is absolutely amazing. Or Lasting Judgment, whatever. The Judgment build is amazing with the Exorcism. But Sheath of Light is also perfectly viable, but you have to take Avengers Shield with it in the grand scheme of things. But we don't have those trinkets available to us at level 40, so this particular strategy doesn't work. At level 50, we'll have those trinkets available to us. We should have Gnomish Nomadic. We should have Goblin Mortar. And so Avengers Shield and Sheath of Light, I would not lament it if that's the way you're doing it. But since I am painfully aware of the value and the tactical flexibility of the increased judgment range in conjunction with Exorcism, absolutely amazing. You could also use it with Avengers Shield. It's not the worst thing in the world. It just won't work as effectively as it would if you're facing specifically a mage. Avengers Shield is more than adequate to get the job done against an elemental shaman. If not superior. But yeah, so the runes are just awful, if not meh. So I approve of Avengers Shield if this is Lasting Judgment. I don't approve of Avengers Shield if this is Sheath of Light, but it's still not the worst thing in the world. In the current phase, it's just triggering me. Okay, so it's done.
This might be a little bit more beneficial for Reckoning build. I know a lot of people get excited for Exorcism spams, but since you don't really have the mobility to catch people, Avengers Shield is going to help. And Repentance is not there to incap someone to catch up to the players. So really think about the choices on the leg.
Yeah, and that's a really bad statement
let me-
because you're not using Repent to catch people, right? This is not your bread and butter sequence as a Ret Paladin. We don't do that in Season of Discovery. That's bad. Opening with Repent to catch someone and then DPSing on them is bad. It's not the worst thing in the world, but it's pretty fucking bad. The way that would work is you grenade stun them, they PvP trinket it, you Repent them, you catch them with Repent, you bubble the first a piece of CC that comes your way, you sit on them for 10 seconds or so in bubble. By that time, the stun duration has worn off, and then you can Hodge stun them for 6 seconds and yada, yada, yada. The difference is... if you did not have to use Repent to catch them, you have like 25 seconds of time of just beating the crap out of them. That whole sequence was 25 seconds. If you catch them with Repent, then you only have like 17 seconds to beat the crap out of them. And of course, if they PvP trinketed the Hodge stun, you've got like 12 seconds, like literally like 11.5 seconds to beat them up. It's really bad. Okay, do not catch people with Repent. Bad idea. Try to resist that at all costs. It's like a last ditch scenario. And he's correct that Reckoning Paladins have issues catching people, but that's really only level 40. And that's really only right now. So it's really only right now where Avengers Shield is valuable, and then later, like literally at level 50, you're going to be taking Exorcism, virtually without exception. Okay, well, I'm going to end the video here, and Deus Volt, boys. This has been Pallytime's ultimate Retribution, whatever guide. I forget what the hell the name of this thing is. The ultimate Paladin Retribution guide for PvE. Definitely not PvP, because this is already 2 hours long. Oh my god. So I'm going to end the video here, and Deus Volt, boys.